When I came home from work, I saw my 6-year-old daughter standing outside freezing in the snow. The temperature was 19 degrees. I know because I'd checked my phone 3 times during the drive home, worried about the pipes freezing, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I turned onto our street. Mia stood on our front lawn in her frozen pajamas, the thin ones she'd begged for at Target last month. No coat, no shoes, just bare feet turning purple in 3 inches of fresh snow. She was perfectly still, staring at our house like she was waiting for permission to enter. I slammed the brakes so hard my coffee tumbled onto the passenger floor, threw the car into park right there in the middle of the street. "Mia!" I ran to her, ripping off my coat as I moved. "Baby, what are you doing out here?" She didn't respond, didn't even look at me. Her lips were blue, her whole body trembling violently. I wrapped my coat around her and lifted her. She weighed nothing, like holding a bundle of frozen twigs. "How long have you been outside?" My voice cracked. "Where's Mommy?" That's when she finally looked at me. Her eyes were wrong, not scared or confused. They were apologetic. "Mommy said I had to wait outside," she whispered through chattering teeth. I was bad. My blood turned to ice that had nothing to do with the weather. Grace and I had been having problems, sure. The separation talks, the custody arguments. But she wouldn't. I carried Mia toward the house, her small body shaking against mine. The front door was locked. My key turned, but the deadbolt was engaged from inside, the one that could only be locked from within. "Grace!" I pounded on the door. "Open up! What the hell is going on?" Silence. Through the frosted window, I could see movement. Someone walking casually through our living room. Not rushing, not concerned, just walking. "Daddy!" Mia whimpered into my shoulder. "She's with the other man." What other man? But even as I asked, I saw him. A shadow passing by the window. Broad shoulders, definitely male. In my house, while my daughter froze outside. I set Mia down on the covered porch and tried calling Grace. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I could hear her ringtone through the door. She was right there, 10 feet away, choosing not to answer. That's when I noticed Mia's hands. Angry red marks around both wrists. Rope burns. "Mia, show me your wrists." She pulled back, ashamed. I tried to come inside when it got dark, but the rope was too tight. "Rope? What rope?" She pointed to the maple tree in our front yard. A frayed piece of clothesline dangled from the lowest branch, cut clean through. My hands started shaking, and not from the cold. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but Mia grabbed my arm. "Don't!" she pleaded. She said if I told anyone, she'd send me away forever, to the place where bad kids go. The front door suddenly opened. Grace stood there in her silk robe, hair perfectly styled, makeup fresh. Behind her, I glimpsed a man I didn't recognize buttoning his shirt. "Oh, you're home early," she said, voice eerily calm. She looked at Mia with cold eyes. "I told you to wait by the tree." "Grace, what did you do?" I stepped protectively in front of our daughter. She smiled. Not her warm smile that I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, but something else, something I'd never seen before. "I'm teaching her consequences." She interrupted Mommy's special time. Again, by tying her to a tree? In the snow? She could have died. Grace laughed. Actually laughed. "Don't be dramatic, I only tied her up for an hour." "Mommy," Mia spoke up behind me. "You left after lunch." The sun was still up. I checked my phone. 6:47 p.m. Sunset was at 4:23 p.m. today. That meant she'd been outside for over 4 hours. In 19-degree weather, tied to a tree. The man behind Grace cleared his throat. "Maybe I should go." "No, stay." Grace touched his arm. "My ex was just leaving. Weren't you, David?" "Ex?" "We weren't divorced. We weren't even legally separated yet." That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop completely. Grace's left hand, where her wedding ring should have been, now bore a different ring. A massive diamond. An engagement ring. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the document on the hall table behind her. Legal papers with a header I could read even from here. Termination of parental rights. My name was already signed at the bottom, but I'd never seen those papers before in my life. "That's not my signature," I said, my voice deadly quiet. Grace's smile widened. "Of course it is. You signed it last Tuesday. Remember? When you were drunk?" She turned to the man behind her. "He has such a problem with alcohol. That's why I'm seeking full custody." I hadn't had a drink in 3 years. Not since Mia was 3, and I'd promised her I'd be the dad she deserved. Grace knew this. She'd been there through every AA meeting, every anniversary chip. "I need to get Mia inside," I said. "She needs medical attention." "She's fine," Grace waved dismissively. "Kids are resilient." I pushed past her, carrying Mia into what used to be our home. The man, tall, probably mid-40s, expensive suit, stepped aside. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Our living room had been transformed. Grace's law books were gone, replaced with medical texts. The family photos had been removed from the mantel. In their place sat a single framed picture. Grace and this stranger at what looked like a tropical resort. "Mia, let's get you in a warm bath." I headed for the stairs. "Actually," Grace's voice was sharp, "visiting hours are over." "Visiting hours?" I turned slowly. "This is my house. She's my daughter. Not according to the emergency custody order." She pulled another document from her robe pocket. "Filed this morning. You've been deemed an unfit parent due to your alcoholism, your erratic behavior, and the domestic violence incident." "What domestic violence incident?" She touched her cheek, where I now noticed carefully applied makeup that almost, but not quite, concealed nothing. It was stage makeup, the kind designed to look like bruising from a distance. You don't remember hitting me last night? Right in front of Mia? I wasn't even here last night. I was at my brother's house until 11, then stayed at the motel off Highway 9. You changed the locks, remember? 3 days ago? The man finally spoke. Grace, maybe we should... This is Dr. Bradley Thornton, Grace interrupted. My psychiatrist. He's been treating me for the trauma you've inflicted. He can testify to everything. Psychiatrist. The ethics violations alone should have ended his career. But the way he stood so close to her, the way his hand rested on her lower back, this had been going on for a while. Mia started coughing, harsh, barking coughs that shook her whole body. When she pulled her hand away from her mouth, there were spots of blood. She needs a hospital, I said. Stop being so dramatic. Grace rolled her eyes. Brad, tell him she's fine. Brad, Dr. Thornton, barely glanced at Mia. Children are surprisingly adaptable to temperature changes. You haven't even examined her. I don't need to. Grace has been keeping me informed of the behavioral issues. Sometimes natural consequences are the best teacher. Behavioral issues. My sweet, quiet daughter who still apologized to her stuffed animals when she accidentally dropped them. What behavioral issues? I asked, though I was already pulling out my phone. The lying, Grace said. The stealing. The violence toward other children. That's not true. Mia's voice was raspy. I never... See? Grace pointed at her. She's doing it right now. Lying. I dialed 911. You call them, Grace said calmly, and I'll tell them you violated the protection order, that you broke in here threatening us. Brad will confirm everything, the operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? I looked at my daughter, frostbitten, coughing blood, rope burns on her wrists, then at my wife and her psychiatrist lover, standing there with their fabricated papers and false accusations. I need police and an ambulance at 482 Maple Street. My 6-year-old daughter has been tied outside in freezing weather for multiple hours. She's showing signs of hypothermia and possible frostbite. Grace's face went white. You bastard! While I gave details to the operator, she and Brad had a furious whispered conversation. I heard fragments. Told you this would happen, and handle it like we discussed, and everything's in place. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. The EMTs took one look at Mia and immediately began treatment. Her core temperature was 92 degrees, moderate hypothermia. The rope burns were infected, early stage frostbite on 3 toes. How long was she outside? The EMT asked. At least 4 hours, I said. She was tied to that tree. The EMT's face darkened. She whispered something to her partner, who immediately called for police backup. Grace stepped forward, tears suddenly streaming down her face. Officers, thank God you're here. My ex-husband is violating a protection order. He's not supposed to be here. 2 cops had arrived. The older one, Officer Ramirez, according to his badge, looked skeptical. Ma'am, we're responding to a child endangerment call. Yes, Grace sobbed. He endangered her. He's the one who put her outside. I just got home and found her like this. I was about to call when he showed up, drunk and violent. That's not true. Mia tried to sit up on the gurney. Daddy just got here. Mommy tied me to the tree because She's confused, Brad interrupted, stepping forward with authority. I'm Dr. Bradley Thornton, the child's psychiatrist. She has a documented history of false accusations and attention-seeking behavior. Combined with the hypothermia, she's likely experiencing confusion. You're not her psychiatrist, I said. She's never seen a psychiatrist in her life. Brad produced a folder. 6 months of session notes say otherwise. I grabbed the folder before the officers could. Inside were detailed psychiatric evaluations of Mia, descriptions of violent outbursts I'd never witnessed, medications prescribed that she'd never taken, all dated, all with Brad's official letterhead and signature, all complete fabrications. These are forged, I said. Check with her pediatrician, Dr. Patel, at Children's Medical. She's never been referred to any psychiatrist. The father is in denial, Brad said smoothly. It's common in cases of abuse. Officer Ramirez looked between us. Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification. As I reached for my wallet, Grace played her next card. He has a gun. Everyone froze. That's a lie, I said, keeping my hands visible. I don't own a gun. Never have. Check his car, Grace insisted. He keeps it under the driver's seat. The younger officer headed to my car while Ramirez watched me carefully. Within minutes, he returned holding a Glock 19, a gun I'd never seen before. That's not mine, I said, my voice hollow. Someone planted that. Sir, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. Wait, please. Test Mia's wrists for rope fibers. Check the tree. Look at the doorbell camera. It'll show how long she was outside. We don't have a doorbell camera, Grace said quickly. He broke it last week in one of his rages. I looked up. The mount where our Ring doorbell had been was empty. Fresh scratch marks on the siding showed it had been recently removed. As Ramirez cuffed me, the EMT spoke up. Officer, this child needs immediate transport. The rope burns show she was restrained for an extended period. The pattern suggests she struggled significantly. The father did it, Grace insisted, before I got home. Ma'am, the EMT's voice was cold. The frostbite progression and core temperature indicate she was outside for a minimum of 3 hours. When did you arrive home? Grace hesitated just a second too long. About an hour ago? Then you left an injured, hypothermic child outside for an hour without calling for help? I was scared. He was threatening us. The EMT made a note on her tablet. I'm mandating transport and police involvement. This child is in immediate danger. They loaded Mia into the ambulance. She reached for me, crying, Daddy, don't let them take me. I'll fix this, baby, I called out as they pushed me toward the police car. I promise. The ride to the station was surreal. 20 minutes ago, I'd been worried about frozen pipes. Now I was under arrest, my daughter was hospitalized, and my wife had orchestrated an elaborate frame-up with her psychiatrist lover. At the station, they put me in an interrogation room. The gun, they informed me, was registered to my name, purchased 2 weeks ago from a gun shop where surveillance footage clearly showed me filling out the paperwork, except I'd been in Denver 2 weeks ago for a work conference. I had plane tickets, hotel receipts, attendance records from presentations. When I told them this, they pulled the footage. It was grainy but clear enough. A man my height, my build, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. He kept his face turned from the cameras, but his gait, his posture, it was uncanny. Even I might have believed it was me if I didn't know better. I need a lawyer, I said. While waiting, I thought about the past few months. Grace's behavior had been changing gradually, so slowly I'd almost missed it. Working late, new passwords on her devices, a sudden interest in my life insurance policy, the fights that came out of nowhere, always when Mia was within earshot. She'd been building this case against me piece by piece. My lawyer arrived. Tom Morrison, an old friend from college. He took one look at the evidence and whistled low. David, this is sophisticated. The gun purchase, the psychiatric records, the protection order. Someone put serious thought into this. It's Grace. And that psychiatrist, Brad Thornton. Tom pulled out his laptop. Let's see what we can find about Dr. Thornton. Within minutes, we had our first break. Brad Thornton had been Grace's psychiatrist. Not Mia's, but Grace's. She'd been seeing him for marriage counseling, solo sessions that I'd encouraged, thinking it would help our relationship. David, Tom said slowly, when did Grace increase your life insurance? 3 months ago. Said it was for Mia's college fund. How much? $2 million. Tom's face went pale. And if you're convicted of child endangerment and domestic violence? I saw where he was going. She gets everything. The house, the savings, the insurance, and full custody of Mia. We need to get to the hospital, Tom said. Now. The police released me on bail with conditions. I couldn't go within 500 feet of Grace or the house. But nothing prevented me from seeing Mia at the hospital. She was in pediatric intensive care, hooked to warming blankets and IVs. The frostbite was worse than initially thought. She might lose her left pinky toe. A nurse was documenting her injuries, photographing every mark. Daddy? Her voice was tiny. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, never. Can you tell me what happened today? All of it? She looked around nervously. Is Mommy here? No, it's just us and my friend Tom. He's here to help. The story came out in pieces. Grace had been leaving her alone for hours, sometimes all day, while she went to appointments. Brad had been coming to the house for weeks. They thought Mia didn't understand what she was seeing, but she did. Mommy told me I was sick, Mia said. That my brain was broken, and that's why I thought bad things about her and Brad. What kind of bad things? That they were doing grown-up things, that they were planning something. I heard them talking about money and papers and making you go away. Tom was recording everything with the nurse's permission. Tell me about today, I said gently. Mommy said we were going to play a game, that I had to stay outside for a little while, and when Daddy came home, I should tell him I'd been bad, but I got cold and tried to come in. That's when she tied me to the tree. Did she say why? Mia nodded. She said if I didn't play the game right, I'd never see you again. That Brad would be my new daddy and I'd have to take medicine that would make me forget you. The nurse made a sound of disgust. She'd been listening while pretending to check monitors. There's more, the nurse said quietly. The blood work shows traces of antipsychotics in her system. Low doses, but consistent with regular administration over several weeks. They'd been drugging my daughter, to make her seem disturbed, to support their false psychiatric records. Tom stepped out to make calls. Within an hour, we had an emergency custody hearing scheduled for the next morning. CPS was involved now. Their investigation launched based on the hospital's report. That night, I stayed in Mia's hospital room, sleeping in the chair beside her bed. Every time she stirred, I was there, making sure she knew she was safe. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Drop the custody fight or the next accident will be real. Attached was a photo of Mia's hospital room, taken from outside the window. We were on the 4th floor. I called hospital security immediately. They found no one, but increased patrols. Tom advised me to forward everything to the police. The custody hearing the next morning was a battle. Grace showed up with Brad and a team of lawyers. She wore a conservative suit, her makeup subtle except for the artfully applied bruising on her cheek. She cried on the stand, describing my alcoholism and violent rages. Brad testified about Mia's psychiatric condition and how I refused to accept her need for treatment. They had documents, dates, a carefully constructed narrative, but we had something better, the truth. Dr. Patel testified that Mia had never been referred to psychiatric care. The hospital presented the blood work showing she'd been drugged without medical authorization. The EMT described the severity of Mia's injuries and the timeline that proved Grace had left her outside. Then came our surprise witness. Grace's assistant, Rebecca, had reached out to Tom after seeing the news. She'd been uncomfortable for months with things she'd overheard and documented. She had recordings from Grace's office, conversations between Grace and Brad planning the entire scheme. Play the recording, the judge ordered. Grace's voice filled the courtroom. The gun purchase is set for next week. Make sure he's in Denver. Brad, you'll need to get the psychiatric forms backdated. How long before the hypothermia becomes dangerous but not fatal? Brad's response, 3 to 4 hours in those temperatures. We need it to look serious but recoverable. The trauma will make her testimony unreliable. And if she doesn't recover? Grace asked. Then it's negligent homicide. He goes to prison, you get everything, and we start fresh in Costa Rica. The courtroom went silent. The judge turned to Grace, his face dark with anger. Mrs. Patterson, you're under arrest for conspiracy, child endangerment, attempted murder, fraud, and falsifying medical records. Dr. Thornton, you're under arrest for the same, plus gross medical malpractice. As they cuffed Grace, she looked at me with those cold eyes. You were supposed to be at work until 7. I left early, I said, to surprise Mia with hot chocolate and a movie. A simple deviation from routine had saved my daughter's life. The investigation that followed revealed the depth of their plan. Brad had been manipulating Grace for months, using their sessions to plant ideas about my dangerous behavior. He'd helped her forge documents, create false evidence, even coached her on how to act as the victim. The gun shop footage was Brad. Similar height and build to me, careful coaching from Grace on my mannerisms. The psychiatric records were completely fabricated, designed to discredit anything Mia might say. They'd planned to escalate the accidents until either I was imprisoned or Mia was too traumatized to testify against them. The endgame was always the same: collect the insurance money and disappear together. Grace's lawyer tried to argue that Brad had manipulated her, that she was a victim too, but the recordings were clear. She'd been an enthusiastic participant, sometimes even the driving force. 6 weeks later, I sat in a new apartment with Mia. The house held too many memories, too many shadows. We'd started fresh: new home, new school, new therapist, a real one this time, to help her process the trauma. "Daddy," she said one evening, coloring at the kitchen table, "why did Mommy want to hurt me?" I'd struggled with how to answer this. The therapist said to be honest, but age-appropriate. "Sometimes people get sick in their hearts," I said carefully. "They want things so badly that they forget how to love properly." Mommy got confused about what was important. Money was more important than me? To her in that moment, yes. But that's not normal, and it's not your fault. You are worth more than all the money in the world. She considered this, adding purple to her drawing of a butterfly. "Will she come back?" "No, sweetheart. She's going to be away for a very long time." Grace got 25 years with no possibility of parole for 15. Brad got 30. The psychiatric angle added additional charges. They tried to flip on each other once the relationship soured in county jail, each claiming the other was the mastermind. The recordings made it clear they were equally guilty. During the trial, more came out. Grace had been planning this for over a year. She'd researched similar cases, studied what worked and what didn't. She'd chosen Brad specifically because of complaints against him that had been covered up. She knew he'd be vulnerable to her influence. The most chilling discovery was a folder on her computer titled Contingencies, different scenarios for how to eliminate me from the picture, each more elaborate than the last. Mia being tied outside wasn't even the worst one. There was a plan involving a camping trip and a tragic accident, a plan involving food poisoning that would look like negligence, a plan involving a house fire where I would be too drunk to save Mia. Each plan carefully detailed, with Brad's medical knowledge ensuring plausibility. The prosecutor said it was one of the most elaborate, premeditated schemes she'd ever seen. The only reason it failed was my early arrival and Mia's survival instinct to keep fighting against the cold. That and a neighbor's testimony we hadn't known about. Mrs. Chen from across the street had been watching through her window, concerned about the child outside. She'd been about to call the police herself when I arrived. Her testimony corroborated the timeline and destroyed Grace's claim that I'd put Mia outside. Mia recovered physically, though she still has a scar on her ankle where the rope cut deepest. The psychological healing took longer. For months, she'd panic if I was even 5 minutes late. She'd check locks obsessively, terrified someone would take her away. But children are resilient. With therapy, love, and consistency, she began to trust again. She made friends at her new school. She laughed at cartoons. She stopped asking if Mommy was coming back. A year later, we were at the park. Mia was on the swings, pumping her legs and laughing. Another mother sat beside me on the bench. "She's beautiful," the woman said. "That laugh could light up the world." "Yeah," I agreed. "She's pretty amazing." "Must get it from her mom," the woman said conversationally. I used to freeze at comments like that. Now I just smiled. "She gets it from being herself." Mia jumped off the swing and ran over, grabbing my hand. "Dad, can we get ice cream?" "Sure, kiddo." As we walked away, she said quietly, "That lady was wrong. I don't get my laugh from Mommy. I get it from you." "How do you figure?" "Because you're the one who taught me it was safe to be happy again." We got ice cream. Chocolate for her, vanilla for me. We sat on the curb outside the shop watching cars go by. Simple, normal, perfect. "Dad?" Mia said, chocolate on her nose. "I'm glad you came home early that day." "Me too, baby." "Do you think—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Do you think Mommy ever loved me? Even a little?" It was the question I dreaded, the one the therapist said would eventually come. "I think she loved you the only way she knew how," I said finally. "But sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes people's love gets so twisted up with other things, money, control, fear, that it stops being love at all. But your love doesn't get twisted." "No, baby. My love for you is the simplest, purest thing in my world. Always has been. Always will be." She leaned against me, satisfied with that answer. Later that night, after Mia was asleep, I sat at my laptop working on the victim impact statement for Grace's sentencing review. 5 years into her sentence, she was petitioning for reduced time based on good behavior and mental health considerations. I looked at the photos from that night: Mia's frostbitten feet, the rope burns, the blood on her lips from coughing. Then I looked at the photo on my desk: Mia at her school play last month, dressed as a sunflower, beaming. I wrote, "Grace Patterson didn't just endanger our daughter's life. She tried to steal her childhood, her trust, her ability to feel safe in the world. She drugged a 6-year-old child to make her seem mentally ill. She tied her to a tree in freezing weather. She did this deliberately, methodically, with full knowledge of the consequences. The physical scars have mostly healed. The psychological ones remain. My daughter still checks that I'm breathing when I sleep, terrified I'll disappear. She still hoards food in her room, afraid of being locked out again. She still asks if love is real or if everyone is just pretending. Grace made a choice. Multiple choices over months of planning. Each choice prioritized money over her daughter's life. That's not mental illness. That's evil. She should serve every day of her sentence. I sent it to the prosecutor and closed the laptop. From down the hall, I heard Mia stirring, making the small distressed sounds that meant nightmares were coming. I went to her room and sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair until she settled. "I'm here," I whispered. "You're safe. I'm always here." She mumbled something in her sleep and reached out. I gave her my hand, and she held it tight. We'd survived. That had to be enough. The sentencing review was denied. Grace would serve at least another 10 years before her next opportunity. Brad's appeals had also failed. The psychiatric board revoked his license permanently, and several former patients came forward with complaints, leading to additional charges. Mia and I moved forward, one day at a time. She joined the soccer team, made honor roll, started piano lessons. Normal kid stuff that felt like miracles after everything we'd been through. Sometimes, on winter nights when the temperature dropped and snow began to fall, she'd stand at the window watching. Not with fear anymore, but with something like wonder. "It's just snow," she'd say, as if reassuring herself. "It can't hurt me anymore." And she was right. The snow was just snow. The cold was just cold. The real danger had never been the weather. It had been the person who was supposed to protect her from it. But that person was gone now, and we were still here, still standing, still together, still healing.